What if your greatest influence isn't in what you do, but in how fully your voice is heard? In today's episode of the Men's Room Show, we sit down with Bryan Wish, CEO of Arcbound, a company that's redefining how thought leaders, founders, and high level executives shape their personal brands. But this isn't a conversation about marketing buzzwords or follower counts. It's about identity. It's about relationship to self. It's about how men, especially high performing men, can move beyond performance and into presence. Bryan, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I feel like we're having a reunion.
Yeah, probably 6, 7 years.
Yeah, 6 to 7 years. It seemed like it was just happened in a blink of an eye. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into today's topic to really discuss, why so many men struggle with having an authentic voice that they put out to the world, what it means to build a platform rooted in relational truth, and how reclaiming your message is deeply personal and often emotional evolution and more. So, with that, I'm gonna just launch right out of the gate, and this is how we work together. But Bryan, you launched Arcbound after seeing Allen Gannett's personal brand journey during the Creative Curve book launch, which it was a pleasure to be able to work alongside you in that journey. And so we'll let our listeners know a little bit about what we did. What was it in that moment that made you realize the power of personal brand? And why did you decide to build a company around that insight?
Yeah, it's a good question. And Linda, it was a joy working with you on the launch. Thanks for all your support. You were a champion of that launch. So thank you for being so engaged and involved. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was so much more than personal branding. It was so much more than launching a book. This was about um, enabling someone's professional trajectory and supporting them in every way possible and seeing how they could go further with the right support behind them. And I think we all know what it feels like when we have the right people behind us who are pushing us forward. It feels like weights off your shoulders. It feels like you have someone in your corner. And that's a pretty special and rare feeling. And so I really enjoyed that experience working with Alan and the people around that project, and ultimately saw an opportunity to say, hey, how could I do this more in a more scalable fashion with doing all the different parts of the brand? So, for him, he had to build a website and take the message from the book and bring it into the website, and then build a platform, and then speak and do events and PR, and have that connect to investing and selling his company. And I saw our work from a very holistic um, sense. And it was a really powerful experience because not only was I able to champion him after he was able to champion me and what I wanted to build in the world, as he said he would when we first started. And that was the first iteration of bryanwish.com, which has now become Arcbound. And even 7 years later, that vision is very much evolving into something even more scalable. And I'm definitely very excited about where things are going and what I've been able to learn over the last 7 years. It's felt like a major education in building a business, learning about myself through that process. It's forced a lot of growth personally and professionally, and put me around some of the most amazing people I think I will ever meet. And excited for the roads it's continuing to take me down.
So that road that you've been going down, I want to ask you a specific question here. So how did you own your voice as you evolved, as you entered that leadership space? And how did Arcbound help you to find the clarity in that evolution? If you could pinpoint one theme, one event, one situation that really like it was it. that gave you that pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't. I think owning your voice is a constant process. It's one that it's very scary to put yourself out there in the first place. It's not easy to say, I'm going to go show up in front of people and let them judge me and let them, But I do think that building a voice, I've never been one that's been like, I need hundreds of followers and thousands of followers, or sorry, thousands and thousands of followers. Um, I've always tried to share for me to get the message I want to share at the right time in front of the right people. And sometimes that's 10 people, sometimes that's five people, sometimes that's one person. Um, I've never been a big person for, growth and vanity for the hell of it. I think um, it can be a bit dangerous to chase that. So I think for me, it's always been my voice in developing it and sharing it has always been thinking about where I've been and where I want to go and the person I want to become personally or professionally and what I want the business to turn into long term and really charting that voice towards that future direction. And I think that's the best way to carve a arc and path for yourself and bring other people along for the ride who want to be on that journey with you.
So I'm curious, during this process of stepping into leadership, building Arcbound, has there been anyone that has been a mentor to you that has helped you to travel that path a little easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had multiple for sure. On the personal front, I mean, you know of somebody named Rich. He's been, about four years ago, 4 summers ago, he stepped into my life in a pretty profound way and really helped me kind of see myself as an individual person and put the pieces together of my past and really helped me understand how I was showing up in the world and really understand behaviors and personal situations from just growing up. I think it's work that sometimes people never go into. It's work that sometimes people hit later in life when things just aren't working. I think I was very lucky at the young age of 28 years old to have somebody in my life who was really helping and sitting with me as I was processing so much of my own journey up to that point in life and really help clear a lot of those blockers and maybe things that were holding me back. So I could start stepping into the person I needed to become. Um, I've started to work also very closely with somebody named Jonathan Bunton, actually alongside Rich, where Jonathan has done a lot of, I think, work with me as well as Rich around like building a relationship now with myself. Um, I think coming out west on this pretty crazy journey I called Westward, which is a pretty big personal development journey. Yeah, I learned a lot about how I got to that point in my life, and it helped me heal a lot of relationships with my parents or people around me, or really just see things in a whole new way and face some of the past moments pretty head on. I think most recently, um, learning to build a relationship with myself has been probably first and foremost. I put so much into building a business and so much into showing up for other people that, I've had to put some people around me to really re-examine like this idea of self-worth. And that's been a pretty raw journey, and that to me is more future focused. It's like what do you need to do as a person in the future to show up in the way and the person that you want to become? And so I think that's been the kind of this next phase that's hit me a few years later. And, I think the more you examine relationships and marriages and why things don't work out, I think people show up a lot from a place of lack and show up from a lot from a place of not really understanding the value they bring into the world and don't show up, from a place that's always healthy when you first meet them. And not saying that you're going to get that perfect, but I do think that you can walk into a partnership, whether in business, personal life, where you do have an understanding of kind of the past and you also have a relationship with yourself. I think that's uh, in the way that you want to have a relationship with yourself. I think it's a pretty powerful way to show up. And so I've had guides in my life who have walked that journey prior to me and kind of held on in the most uncomfortable moments, but have been super fortunate to see these older men invest time in me on a personal level. Um, it's really sacred and special work, and realize, I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to have those influences in my life because most people don't.
You're absolutely correct on having gratitude for the people that come into our lives, whether they're older than us, younger than us, peers, um, to be able to go on that journey. And so, the journey doesn't just end with your inner work or even just serving as the leader of the team, but also you've got your clients that come through your path, right? And
Yeah.
so your clients might be, having some resistance to where they need to step into to be that leader, to be that brand. And so how does your experience both personally and professionally play into how you work with your clients when you might identify some of those themes happening?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's actually a really good question. I think in the way that our business is operating today, even though we're evolving into a more scalable future state, we're working with some very high level individuals, people who have achieved at a very high level professionally. Um, they've made the money, they've built the company, they've sold the company, they've done it at the highest level. Um, but sometimes they show up and they also lack development in other areas. Well, a lot of times they also come into our world and they're in their own transition from this professional journey, finally like decompressing and then kind of unraveling from all the things they were doing, and not unraveling in a bad way, but just like letting air breathe on them in a way that allows them to like kind of go into their past experiences to kind of think about who they want to be in the future state. Um, and so I think the depth in which that I've been able to dive into myself, no, as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes, or the realizations that I've had to face, especially in the last just even couple months, to be honest with you, um, the way I can show up in conversations with those people on a sales call and a normal conversation, the ability to build connection with those people happens that much faster because those people are open and receptive to that, are entrusting me to see certain things and then say those things and then be like, oh, this like he really understands me. And I do think I have a natural tendency to really understand people because I can see them in the present moment and be like, oh, I understand from these three or four data points certain questions to ask them or make them think about things in a way of like how they've gotten to where they are and kind of lead them to that and then be like, oh, it's almost like a coach in a way because you have so much of your experience on your own journey where, I see myself as like a guide in that, even if the people are 20 or 30 years older than me, I mean, I've definitely, I think, have been lucky enough to have influences that have pushed my development, so I can maybe help the development of others, right? And then yeah, so I think to your point, I'm able to point things out and see things and help people who I can maybe meet where they are. Because if I hadn't done that work for myself, like the service infrastructure, because we're selling more than a service, right? We're not just selling a functional thing. Like we are meeting people in a pretty vulnerable spot in life. Um, and to be able to guide them, they need to trust you, and to trust you that they need to know that you understand them and where they are.
Oh, I agree with you completely. Being able to connect and to empathize and then build that connection and trust where you can have those open conversations where you can describe what it is that you're going to bring to their world knowing that they might have some areas that they're going to need a little extra support and being able to receive that in and implement it. That's true. And, you know, taking that and then flipping it around because um, as a CEO, you're always going to be in that role where you're being the visionary. You're clearly articulating what the path is to accomplish what you're going to achieve, and you're a brand builder in yourself, right? And being able to do that. And so I'm curious, what practices support your own voice to be heard? 'Cause I don't think it's a given that you're the CEO, that your voice is being heard. It's a little different. There's a fine line between giving a message and actually being heard and listened to.
Yeah, so the question is more specifically, like what allows my voice to be heard? Like define being heard.
Yes. Well, you might say the direction is XYZ.
Yeah.
However, people may or may not see your vision, and you might need to be able to take in some feedback or have a space where they can ask you some additional questions. So that means that you are getting vulnerable and putting out there what you need to be said in a way that other people can take it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. I mean, it's funny. I took a test. Um, um, it was interesting. I took a test like two years ago at a leadership retreat. It was this culture index test. And I remember the guy showed me my chart and um he showed me my chart and he said I there was this dot and it was like projected way out to the right. It's like this line is like this normal XY axis graph and like my dot compared to the average, I forget what it was measuring specifically, but it was literally like very abnormally out to the right. Um, and I remember the guy said something to me I'll never forget, and he said, he's like, you're so far out into the future, and you see so far ahead so quickly. He's like, you're gonna need like really good operators around you. Um, and so. He was right in a lot of ways because I actually do because I see like 10 steps ahead. Um, it's the biggest gift in the world in some ways. I'm so glad I have that quality. But sometimes I see those 10 steps and the 8 steps to get there are very fuzzy and I don't know how to communicate those 8 steps and mobilize people in a way I need to. It's hurt me personally because I'm so far out in front of something. Yeah, I'm not letting the play develop, even though I know like it's that path makes sense. It's hurt me professionally because I rush in a direction that makes so much sense to me, but I don't. Um, but I think that's part of learning. I mean, I'm young, right? Like I have to be grateful. I'm 32 and I have these insights about myself. But I think what I've learned is I need to put really steady people around me and really strong like operators and structured people around me. In the last maybe 2 years of at least on the work front, I've been able to put some really solid engineers around me. I'm not saying all engineers are steady. I think they see things in a more steady way, and that's very actually helpful for me. So, somebody who's right now in the background to a degree, like I've there is a steady and thoroughness to an engineer type that I really value, but an engineer type who's also a founder type. Like I can really appreciate that. I've put um, a woman named Blair on my team, and like really in front of our operation, really is like to a degree acting as a general manager or getting there. I mean, she's the one who's really communicating that vision. Um, I also struggle with numbers, right? Like when you run a business, like you got to know the numbers. And while I know the numbers enough, um, I have put somebody around me who's very strong financially, has an engineering background and is taking the client services business very far, who doesn't live 10 years out, like he probably lives 3 years, 4 years out, but like I'm looking often like 5 to 7 years out. And it's so to your point, like I've struggled kind of mobilizing and communicating um, multiple people at a time internally with our team because they're not thinking like that, right? They're just like showing up and doing their job and like doing an amazing job doing it. But there's a gap in what I think people are going to understand how quickly they are the way I see it versus like them understanding it. And that's why there's integrators or people who are COOs or people who can really translate a step down in a way that not like a hierarchy step down, but like just a step down of like an information gap to make it understandable. And I'm really grateful because I've started to put those people around me and kind of lock into those people. I think personally, like finding partnership with someone in a similar way would be actually very smart for me to do because you know, if you're with someone I think fully like yourself, I think I think that'd be a hard recipe to make work. So that's kind of yeah, it's a loaded question, but it takes a village, I think, for somebody, at least like myself, to communicate the things I want, be heard, and I still have to repeat myself over and over again.
I love what you shared. Yes, I asked you a loaded question because that's what I do, because I really want to get to the depth of the question. And you said a lot of things that show self-awareness as a leader. And one of those is as a visionary, I can't do it on my own. I'm going to need integrators, people that are closest to the work to carry it out. I might need some help in some of the messaging so that everyone that's working on the team clearly knows where the vision is, the steps to take it to get there. And so all of those things are great. And so that really was what I was looking for is how as a leader, when you don't have every competency, you need other people that are part of the team that have the competencies and the two are lockstep. And so you're right, you have a visionary front and you got an integrator front, and the two working in tandem can do great things, and that makes a cohesive, high performing team. So being able to say that, I might need some help in the messaging, the numbers, how can we do that? And trusting the people that you hire, I can tell that you do. You said that they're very solid in their operations, the tasks that they do. And so having that trust on your team to bring things forward and knowing that they can come to you and that you're going to listen and hear their voices. And so it's a two-way street. And that's what I was looking for is it a two-way street when you're leading a company? And absolutely I think the best companies have that. And so that's great that you build on that foundation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, not perfect by any stretch,
Well,
but
no, that's okay. None of us are perfect, and it's okay for the leader to say, "I don't know," or "I need some support in this area. Will you go there with me?" And so that's being vulnerable and honest. It's being real,
yeah.
and that's what people they want to work for a place where they can all be themselves and get the support they need and you rock and roll and get things done, and
Yeah.
impact the world greatly. Um, I guess one of the other questions I'm wondering is in your work, what's the deepest joy that you've experienced personally or professionally when you've helped a leader to find that voice, to step into that role?
My specific example or my greatest joy as part of that process. Like,
Yes, can you think of a time where you were going through that process and what you saw and what you experienced?
yeah. Um, we are doing right now, uh, I think where our business started was at least historic context here, we started out by doing LinkedIn posts. And then because it was the most recurring, scalable way to do things. And we started out by we did newsletters, and we did podcasts, and then we added in like writing books. And then we added in this whole, in the last like 2 years, I've added in this whole upfront brand work where we can really define somebody, um, their message, who they are, what they stand for, how they want to be positioned, who they want to be positioned for. I mean, it's a pretty nice product and delivery of what we've built. Um, and what we do, we call it our arc launch process. And, you know, I actually I'm kind of sick and tired of like the whole LinkedIn like bull crap. Like it's just kind of like it's part of what we do. It's a function of what we do. It's an extension. But I think it's just silly to like and I mean I write my own stuff and like I do it because it's just like it's part of the process, it's part of the game. But I guess like I don't get really excited anymore about I don't get excited about growing someone's LinkedIn following. Like and it's not don't make this the video clip you use, but like I could care less about that to be honest with you. What I care about is someone I'll give you an example, but someone is able to show up with their voice, how they want to be heard, and show up in that voice that's true to them and what they believe in their heart, because like that's going to bring the right people into your life, right? And so, for an example, we had a recent client go through our ARC launch process, and his name's Sean McGinnis, and Sean is a big mentor. He had been for years, and then he became a client. We ended up doing his website. It's beautiful. It's called seanmcginnis.com if you want to go to it. But like it took 3.5, 4 months to do and do well. But the end product was him to a T. The colors, the look, the feel, the messaging, the like it was everything that like it was him on a website, right? Just as like when I look at Arcbound, like it's like my vision from 7 years ago on a website. It's like and it's different. It's spacey. It's you know, it's it's not like your traditional branding company, you know? And so I think where I get excited is when we do this work for people and they say, that's me. Like, I'm proud to represent myself in that way visually, uh, in a way that's fully who I am. Not getting emails from clients like we used to, like, why isn't my LinkedIn following growing by X? And I'm like I'm in the wrong business. Like I didn't start this business to growth hack your LinkedIn. I started this business to like bring you and who you are to the surface and like show you a way to do it, but not be your, growth hacker online. Like we're not working with those transactional clients anymore. Thank God. Um, and like it's just bad revenue. And I don't want clients at my door. Why aren't you growing my stuff by this? And it's like it's honestly like ridiculous like what people will pay for to like have more following, in my opinion. So I think what I love and where I like get out of bed in the morning right now is where um, you can define yourself as a person, and you can show up how you want in the content through a quality newsletter, through a podcast where you can like interview and get your voice out there, or LinkedIn posts that, yeah, they do like speak your truth. And if 20 people like them versus 450, like that's okay too. Um, and not really caring. But I think, it's interesting, right? People get into this space because of this ego that I think they have in these outer layers, and they get their ego dinged when things don't like blow up and their dopamine hits don't happen. And I think learning to like let go of the validation you need from other people is like a growth journey in itself, and understanding where that comes from. So you don't like give a crap about every time your post gets 40 likes or 20 or 200. And I think what I love is when people have a physical or a tangible end product, and they look at it and say, "Oh, that's me," and you captured who I am. And I think there's nothing more beautiful when you're able to do that and then communicate that message across mediums in a way that's true to that individual.
You're speaking my language in volumes, Bryan, because, you know, doing things for the transactional likes and followings and all of those arbitrary things to what people would say is to, beat the algorithm to get there. that's not depth. That's not about building a personal brand. That's completely something different. And so, you know, it's obvious to me that Arcbound and you are not wanting to work with people that are transactional because that's not what you're about. And for you to say that this is who we're not for, and this is who we're for, people that want depth, they want to show their 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 tangible attributes and their character and really build the brand. And you're right, the two people that are powerfully served are better than those 1,000 people that just were out there just scrolling. And so I appreciate you saying that. And as a leader, you get to say some things in our own companies where it may not be popular to whatever's going on in the society and whatever the flavor of the month is, um, but there's something more solid there, something that can continue to have a foundation for growth to happen in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
It's not going to come and go with the trends of likes, following, and all that other things that tend to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like, um, well, yeah, actually, that doesn't really make sense for this com part of the conversation. But yeah, I kind of agree more with you. I'm glad you resonate and not surprised.
Okay, so I have a question here that I want to put out there so we can give some advice to our listeners. And so, what is one practice, daily, weekly, whatever, whatever time frame, where a person could shift their mindset? And so that way they can be able to like show up more fully now and not like plan 10 years out of where they're going to get to. What is it? What was it that they can do now as a daily practice to get them there quicker?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, not something I'm amazing and perfect at, but I mean, I do a meditation every morning. And it's one that talks, it just kind of says everything is always working out, and it's just kind of like, this focus on like things are working out the way they're supposed to. And it's a 15-minute one. I listen to it first thing when I get out of the bed, and I've been doing it since every day since the beginning of the year. Um, I think I like to read books. Sometimes I go through seasons where I'm reading more, other periods I'm not. Um, I've been reading a lot of books in like more spiritual and personal development over the last couple months. That have been pretty good for me. That I feel like my body's thawing out a little bit, but I think we go through periods where you take on more of that work and you go into the next season of life, and then other times like it's not, that work is a little dormant, but I think then you become a bit disconnected from yourself when you that work goes dormant. And so I think it's that fine balance of diving in. I mean, I do weekly coaching sessions. I do a lot of personal writing and prompting writing. Like I spend a lot of time on a weekly basis taking like how I feel inside and like putting that to paper. It's like my release. I'm doing Pilates right now on a pretty daily basis, or at least at home foundational exercise. I got injured a couple of years ago when some stresses happened, and um, so leaning into my health, even though like it's not where I really wanted to be at all right now. Like it's having a practice on a daily basis. Um, I walk a lot at night in the mornings. I spend a lot of time alone. And it is lonely, but it's I think in the spirit of getting my life where it needs to be, in the way I want, and I think protecting my energy from people who don't really add value to it. So to your question, I think it's a pretty holistic answer. It's not one thing, it's not another thing. It's all the things, and making intentional time for all those aspects in your life to come together in a way that makes sense for you. That is probably what I'd say to answer your question, which is a great question, but I don't think a one silver bullet either.
Well, you're right. All of these different multiple practices, both ones where you sit with yourself in your space to think and reflect, and then other ones where you're out using movement of your body. When you take the two together, then you've got this place where you can ground yourself, protect your energy, build that capacity in space that you need to go out and do all the things that are important to you. And so really, I love your answer because that's where it is. It's not just one thing. It
Right.
can be a series of things taken collectively that'll take you over the course of your life to put into practice
Yeah.
and work powerfully for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I think too, like I think it's about finding people. Like, look, you're asking these questions because you have the emotional capacity and development, I think, to understand what works for you and what's worked for others. And I think too, it's um, sometimes you learn hard lessons along the way where you need to surround yourselves with people who can appreciate those qualities in you and not overinvest in people who maybe don't have the emotional capacity or spiritual capacity to really appreciate certain qualities about you. And I think that can be hard to do. And so, like, I think the last piece I'd add is like fulfilling, putting relationships around you with people who can appreciate the work ethic that you have professionally and like the dynamism there, but also like the mellowness personally and like what you need to like recharge and be yourself and like and not overinvest in others who maybe don't have that, which I think is a learning. So I think it's you got to surround yourself with great people, and I think the more people you meet, the more you can realize people's limitations. You can realize people's strengths. I mean, not that I'm perfect, but I do think there are parts of me that are definitely more evolved and developed in some ways that like really appreciate in other people to spend more significant time with them.
Think that's excellent advice, Brian, to surround yourself with the people that bring you forward and you can grow and thrive, and then be discerning about the other people that maybe take away from that. They're distracting or they can't meet us where we're at. And so that's good to be able to communicate what we need in our environment for us to be able to have that thing or those things that we need. And I think that's perfect.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Well, it's been a real pleasure to be able to have this reunion to connect several years later, and we just picked up right where we left off. And so I think that's fabulous. I've always been excited to follow your work, to see what you're putting out in the world. It's great things. You're just moving the needle and learning and growing. And yeah, I just wish you all of the best in that journey. And yeah,
hmm. Well, thank you, Linda. It's great to reconnect with you. It's great to see, you've always been a positive force for good, and however I can help support and further your mission, I'm happy to be a support.
thank you.